Hi everybody, and welcome to this next episode of It's a Fair Question. Homelessness is an endemic problem across Scotland. The good news is that the Church of Scotland, often in partnership with other denominations, is absolutely at the vanguard of the response. Practical Christian caring being worked out day by day. This is Challenge Poverty Week, and today I've come down here to St Cuthbert's Church in Edinburgh. I'm going to meet Richie Roncero. Richie is the founder and the operations manager of an inspirational organisation called Steps to Hope. The beauty of it is led by those who have lived experience similar to those they are reaching out to. Tell us how you used your experience of life to get this organisation up and running.
We're a non-profit organisation that's set up to aid and support the homeless and those suffering from addiction. The church, St Cuthbert's, have been an incredible support. Anything that we've asked that would help, the running off the project, they were more than willing to step in. On a Sunday night, we've got Sunday suppers, we call it, and so it's a food provision initially, which gives us a platform to engage with the guys that use our services. So we've got different positions available. So we've got the cooks who focus on putting out the amazing food. Then we've got other helpers who are serving the food and tea and coffees. And then we've got guys in recovery with lived experience engaging with those that are there. And building relationships, building trust, building a connection, giving them hope. Steps to hope, and what's happening through that. So we've got guys coming for something to eat, a bowl of soup, a roll, whatever, and all of a sudden they're starting to we're bringing down barriers with these guys. They're starting to believe that there is a possible change for themselves. So we then chaperone them over to mutual aid groups. That's the great thing about Steps to Hope. We don't signpost, we chaperone. So for example, I'm going to a meeting on Tuesday, it's going to be filled with like-minded people, addicts in recovery. Do you want to come with me? We're walking into a meeting the first time myself, and it was scary, daunting. I wanted to run out the room. So having that support, getting them integrated with the recovery community is massive. So from that we then have accommodation where we pay for those that are thrown everything into recovery, that are attending their meetings. We'll put them into accommodation that we pay for, and we can refer them to a 12-step treatment centre, which again is peer-led. The therapists there are addicts in recovery, and that again just snowballs into them getting clean and sober and housed. Just been so accommodating, and we're so grateful to have the relationship we have with St Cuthbert's. We've not only got the Sunday soup kitchen here, but we actually have the Sunday overnight shelter, and that sadly have to shut due to COVID. We are looking to get that back up and running. We're very keen to do that, but providing the space, they've installed a shower room as well for us. So when we can get the shelter back open, the guys can now get a shower. Peter, Jeanette, Alan, Chris, they actually help with the actual running off the services as well. Peter's here in, week out, laying out all the clothes of donations that we get.
Richie, much of your adult life has been lived with no fixed abode, and some of that time you've been homeless. I guess that wasn't your ambition when you were growing up, so can you tell us how you got to that place? Tell us a wee bit about your life.
I think going back as far as I can remember, I was very nervous. I was quite nervous as a child. I had a lot of fear in my life, low self-esteem. I wasn't very confident. I had a bit of a dysfunctional upbringing, absent father and alcoholism within my family, and it just left me with a nervous disposition. I kind of coped through my childhood with trying to make people laugh. That was my coping mechanism. Every time someone laughed at my joke or smiled at me, I felt accepted, and that's really all I wanted, was to be accepted. So going through school, I kind of was the class clown, and I didn't realise at the time it was just from my own insecurities and fears is the reason why I behaved this way. I was always getting into trouble, and when I was 15-year-old I got kicked out of school. I ended up moving in with my grandma at that point, and that's when I kind of found substance. Alcohol and cocaine was my problem, and at 15-year-old someone gave me a line of cocaine, and instantly, within a second, everything changed. My fears disappeared, my anxiety went away, I was confident, I could speak to people. I was almost reborn, if I'm being honest. It was my answer that I had been looking for. So from that moment on, that was my go-to thing. Every day I wanted to change the way I felt about myself, and I used alcohol and substance for that.
Was there a particular moment, a light bulb moment for you when you were in the depths of the addiction that started you on the road to recovery?
Yeah, I suppose pain was my greatest teacher. It got too sore, and I just couldn't do another day living that life. My active addiction took me to places that I certainly didn't want to be, prison and losing relationships within my family, not seeing access to my children. I wanted to change my life, but I couldn't. I didn't have the tools to do so. And I tried so many methods. I went to the GP, psychologists, counsellors, rehab, residential. I tried many, many different things. And the information, the one key bit of information that wasn't given to me was I needed another addict in my life, someone who was clean and sober with lived experience. No one ever told me that. So when I met this guy who was 13 years clean and sober at the time, and we started to work together on myself, barriers were brought down instantly, and I started to recover. And for the first time I got clean and sober. And so fast forward, and I wanted to use this vital bit of information and incorporate it within a charity and reach people who have never heard of recovery, who never thought it was possible, and use the therapeutic value of one addict working with another and incorporate it into this organisation. Getting taken through the recovery process with my mentor, it taught me that Richie's way doesn't work, and I had to have a power in my life, God. And I wasn't... religion was never really part of my life in the past, and I was sore enough to try anything, and I started to get down on my knees and hand over my will to the care of God, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years, 8 months, and I've remained clean and sober, which is incredible.
So I rejoice with you in what you've just shared. It's just a fantastic story of turnaround. Tell me this, from getting yourself sorted to starting up Steps to Hope, what was the process? How long did that all take?
So, initially the first few weeks, I was obviously going through this process, and I was learning about what I suffered from, and how I operated, my behaviours and stuff. And I had to start to implement change. And through that, I had to look at my past and things that I had done to people and where I had to make amends. And part of the word amend, I used to think was saying sorry. It's not. The word amend means implement change. It's about change. And that's what I done. So I went out and tried to make amends to society for being selfish all my life. And me and my daughter, she was 12-year-old, we went out and handed hats and gloves, 5 hats, 5 gloves, out to rough sleepers, and that's where this all snowballed from. Me and my daughter going out, and every year at Christmas time we would do 10 bags, then 40 bags, and it kind of grew arms and legs, and then we registered the charity in 2018. Through this process, through this programme, through God, I have my daughter back. She named the charity Steps to Hope. She lives with me full time in a house that I now own. Richie couldn't do that.
Richie, when you talked about discovering cocaine, you said it was like you were being reborn. But listening to you now, it absolutely sounds like you've been reborn again. Is that right? Is that how it feels to you?
Absolutely. I got something, we talk about gifts in recovery, and getting a day clean and sober was a huge gift. But I started learning to love myself, getting my family back in my life, getting a house of my own, and now being able to carry a message of hope to so many people is it's just beautiful, and I'm a very grateful addict today, you know.
What's the vision? What's the hope for the project?
I don't think we could put the brakes on this even if we tried, you know, and it's such a short, I think we're just stepped into year 3. We've already got 3 soup kitchens, the overnight shelter, a catering van, we've just acquired our first property, we're about to get our second property. I would like to expand to Glasgow, to Dundee, and I think there's a need for Steps to Hope in all the major cities, all up and down the UK.
Well, from St Cuthbert's in the city centre, I'm now here in Pilton, a district in North Edinburgh, and I'm in the warehouse of Fresh Start. Fresh Start is a project that helps people who have experienced homelessness to make a home for themselves. I'm going to be chatting with Carrie-Ann, who is the business manager, and with the very Reverend Dr Russell Barr. Russell is a former moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, absolutely key to the founding of the project, along with various of his colleagues back in 1999.
Fresh Start helps people who have experienced homeless set up their new home. It can be a really exciting time when you get the new keys to your tenants, then that excitement can soon fall when you realise that you've not got anything to make a cup of tea on or eat your dinner in, and the walls are bare and old and stained, and it can actually feel really quite demotivating and demoralising, and that is where we step in to try and fill that void. We offer 12 different starter packs, and they range from bedding, toiletries, curtains, towels, crockery and kitchenware, all the essentials that you need in your home that you sometimes don't think about. Mainly think of the larger items like a sofa and a bed, but we are there for the small essentials that you need just as much as the big ones. We also can offer practical support from painting and decorating 2 rooms in someone's house, and we do that with a real dignified approach where someone gets to pick the colour and get involved with our volunteers and staff group as well. In a normal year, minus the pandemic, we would normally deliver about 13,000 starter packs throughout Edinburgh, and to a range of different people. All circumstances are different. There was 3,000 people registered as homeless last year in Edinburgh alone. From our statistics, we know that 70% of those people that we've personally helped have experienced mental health issues, and about 1/3 of them have experienced domestic abuse, which is really important to make sure that they feel included and sort of fight that isolation as to when they go into that new property, to really make it feel like a home and somewhere that they want to be, so that they don't fall back into homelessness again.
Carrie-Ann, people will have all kinds of perceptions about what leads to homelessness. Can you say a wee bit about the causes of homelessness as you come across it here at Fresh Start?
Generally, I mean, when people think of someone that is homeless, they think of the people that you see on Princes Street when you're out shopping, for an example. However, those people that are classed as street homeless, as we sometimes would term it, there is actually only around 6 or 7% of those people make up the entire homeless population. A lot of people the majority of people actually that are homeless are those living in B&Bs or hostels, or then there's the hidden homeless of the people that are sleeping on people's couches who aren't even registered in those figures. In all honesty, anyone can become homeless. It can be the breakdown of a relationship, the loss of a job, or just a bad decision that leads to down that path that can lead to someone becoming homeless. And I think that's quite a big misconception, is that something must have went terribly wrong, or you must have done something terribly wrong to end up homeless. Personally, when I was a little girl, we were homeless and had to sleep on, me and my mum had to sleep on my granny's floor, and we then secured a tenancy through the housing association, and I was only a little girl at the time, so I only have vague memories, but I do know that when we moved into that property we didn't have very much, and it took us a long time to build that up. And back then there wasn't an organisation that would help, such as this.
I've been inspired by what I've seen here, and yet from what you've said there's more to come. Can you tell me some of the future planning for Fresh Start?
We're hoping that next year we will have our new community hub open. Now that will bring all our services together here in North Edinburgh and Pilton, and we will be running our cooking classes and training initiative out. We'll also have a social space for local people to really fight that isolation and allow people locally to have a place to come and really feel at home in their community as well as the home that they live in.
One of your services is called the pantry. What is the pantry all about?
The pantry is run as a membership system where people that live locally in the EH4 and EH5 postcode areas can become a member and do their grocery shopping for only £3.50 a week. So within that £3.50 they can get 10 items. There's a mixture of lower and higher cost items that they can get for that, and then also some free items that are donated locally from bakers and fruit and veg and that sort of thing that they pick up on top of their 10 items. It's not a subscription, it's as and when it's needed, but we fast-tracked the opening of the pantry as a result of the pandemic to sort of fill that gap between giving people food parcels and allowing them to have that choice themselves and really take ownership of their own money as well as their own eating habits and choices. We have 200 members at the moment, and on average every day we probably have between 50 and 60 customers. So it varies. We don't obviously have the full 200 members using it on a weekly basis, but that's what it's about. It's when a family needs it or a person needs it that it's there for them to access. So it's been really successful, and we've received some really good feedback about the choice of items that are available since we've opened at the end of June there. So it's been really positive.
Russell, as you approach your retirement from Cramond Kirk, can I ask you to think back 20 years ago plus to the beginning of Fresh Start? Tell me how it came into being.
But 20 odd years ago, if you recall, we were approaching not my retirement but AD 2000, and so one or two of us wondered what the church might do, what the churches in Edinburgh might do to mark the anniversary. A group of us met, an ecumenical group, Richard Holloway from the Scottish Episcopal Church, the late Keith O'Brien from the Roman Catholic Church, Paul King from the Methodist Church, one or two others. And we thought, with the gospel story about being no room at the inn, maybe something around homelessness. So that was the kind of the starting point that we might do, the churches might do something. Because of the nature of what we work at, we all did our own little bits of research to discover what was already happening. And then at one of our meetings, somebody had a bright idea. Now, we all claim the credit, but none of us could actually remember who it was. Somebody said, here we all are, the good and the great, so to speak, of Edinburgh churches, pale, male and stale, and we're wondering what we can do for people who are homeless. Might be a good idea to ask somebody who is homeless what, if anything, they might like the church to do. So that's what we did. We set off, the group of us, and we met, interviewed, spoke to many people who were homeless as we could find. And out of that, the Fresh Start was born. It wasn't difficult those years ago to get a key for a flat and what you could maybe carry in a black bag. And how did you turn that into a home? And out of that, the starter packs and everything that you've now heard about Fresh Start, that's how it was born.
Why is it important for the church to be involved in this kind of endeavour? Some might say that church should be about singing and praying on Sunday mornings. How can the two be held in balance?
In my mind, that they're held together absolutely essentially, because what we do is we gather together as a community on a Sunday or whatever time we gather together to sing, to pray, to listen to God's word. When we do that, we hear about Jesus teaching his disciples not to walk past on the other side of human need. We hear stories about, when did I see you hungry? When did I see you thirsty? When did I see you in prison and visit you? We read from the Old Testament the passion that the prophets had for justice, for fairness, for fair dealing in society. Now, if, as we do, we gather to worship, if these stories actually mean anything, if our prayers, our worship is authentic, when we walk out of the church door, God sends us out, I think, to put into action some of the things we've just been hearing about. So that bringing together of faith and practice seems to me to be the most natural thing in the world.
Fresh Start is a very practical response to need. But so too we're called to be prophetic and to address policymakers and governments and authorities. Has there been opportunity through the life of this project for you to do just that?
Yes, there has. Yes, there has. You're more than familiar with the old story about, give somebody a fish and you'll feed them for a day. Teach them to fish. They'll feed themselves, their family, their community. Why was there homelessness? Why were people homelessness in 21st century Scotland? We're one of the rich countries in the world. We're not one of the poor countries. But why, with all our good efforts, and there were many good efforts, Moderator, why were the levels of people being accepted as homeless, being accredited as homeless each year, why was that not changing? So something was broken in the system. And one of the things that was broken, and one of the significant things that has changed, was there was no coordination between what was happening at central government, who were making policy, what was happening in the local authority, who were implementing policy, and what was happening in the third sector, charities like Fresh Start, who were in the main delivering many of the services. None of that was joined up. None of that was coordinated. People weren't really speaking to one another. And all the local authorities were doing different things. The charities were doing different things. The government was not really hearing or listening to what was happening on the ground. There was no way of that circle of information feeding back. And I used the platform that being Moderator gives. I used that to raise issues with the political world. And out of that, the Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Action Group was born. And it's transformed the political thinking and the policy making in Scotland. Transformed it around a principle that came from the United States but was pioneered really in Finland and Norway, in these countries, the principle of housing first. If somebody is homeless, what's the thing that's missing? The clue's in the word. They're missing a home. So rather than putting people through lots and different hoops, let's see if we can do housing first. Let's see if we can give somebody a settled home. Now, in many cases, that's all they need. That's sufficient. Sometimes you need to wrap around a bit of support and a bit of help. Let's do that. And all the evidence from Finland, from Norway, and from parts of the US where it's been implemented, all the evidence suggests it makes a dramatic difference. And as it's implemented and as it's rolled out in Scotland, it will make a dramatic difference.
Russell, I know we're not supposed to do pride, but I'm sure as you reflect back on all that has been and all that goes on here, there must surely be some satisfaction for you as you come towards retirement.
Quite difficult for me to put into words. And quite emotional, but one particular meeting when I was with some people who were homeless, and we'd finished our conversation. I'd done, as it were, from the meeting what I wanted to do, and I said to the two lads, "Okay, that's great, really appreciate it. I'm heading for home now. It was late in the evening. Can I give you a lift somewhere?" And they said, "No, it's okay. We're just going down to Haymarket." And up until then, it had been an exercise in my head that this was something that we could do. Suddenly it became something in my heart.
Well, Russell, thank you. Thank you, Carrie-Ann, as well, for giving of your time, for introducing me to Fresh Start. It's been inspirational, and I want to wish you and the project every blessing in the days ahead. And Russell, for you, as you come near these last days of your ministry at Cramond, that it would be a wonderful time full of joy and reminiscing, and every blessing for the days ahead.
Thank you, Moderator.